All right, Ella. Ella, where are you from originally? Where'd you grow up?
Originally from Jiangsu, China. I was adopted at 8 months old, but I've basically, since I've been conscious, I've been in Dallas, Texas.
You were adopted?
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about your parents.
So I don't know anything about them. And I found out at like a residential rehab facility when I was a teenager that my birth parents actually left me at a bus stop. And I thought, the way I thought it happened is they left me with my name. So I thought they at least gave me a name, but turns out they didn't. So I was just alone at that bus stop until someone eventually brought me to an orphanage.
At what age was that, do you think?
They said it looked like I was a day old. But they really had no way of knowing.
Did this have something to do with the laws in China?
Yes, it did. So I was born during the one-child law. So they probably couldn't keep me. I try to find a lot of comfort in that, but then again, there's a lot of issues that I've had with it, So I feel like it's a hard thing to come to a realization about, especially when it was kept a secret from me my whole life, and then to be told like so bluntly at the rehab that I was at, which is a wilderness program. It like shocked me. I remember when I found out, it was like it triggered something in me that I had always felt but had never been able to like put a name on, which was that like I was just unwanted, basically. So I found out, and I just remember crying really hard and going into like a really dark space because of that.
And the family that adopted you, tell me about them.
So I was adopted by two moms. My parents are gay, and from what I've heard, I forget which one of my moms, they went with their parents, but they told the orphanage that my other mom was the sister, because maybe they had some issues with being gay there. So they got me. Everything was good in their marriage until there was an instance of infidelity. And my mom and both of my adoptive moms separated from one another. And the mom that committed the act of infidelity remarried that same woman. It was okay at the beginning. I remember being not a troubled kid at all. I never got in trouble. I was a good kid. Maybe the one thing that I wouldn't do was like practice piano. My parents had me playing instruments and getting into music and stuff. It wasn't until around puberty that I started having like behavioral issues. Now, at first it started, I think 12 or 13. I grew up pretty privileged. I went to private school. I was an A and B student. Like, nothing was really wrong until the 8th grade happened. And it was the summer. And I just remember kind of going into what I now know is depression. I didn't know anything about depression or what it was at the time. But I was sleeping like all the time, like all day. I had no appetite. I wasn't eating. And even if I was hungry, I just didn't care. Like, I couldn't get up. And then I just remember having like a really unfamiliar feeling of like not wanting to be here and like kind of thinking about self-harm, but like didn't really know what it was. I wouldn't have done it. I wouldn't have killed myself, but the ideation was there. And I think now as an adult, when I've been depressed, there's a clear difference between what I felt like in my own suicide like mindset when I was a kid to when I'm an adult. So that happened. I told my mom about it and she was worried, but she put me on medication. So I was on that medication. Freshman year, I started having more behavioral issues. I had really bad anger issues, and it wasn't just like anger, it was rage. And I didn't know why. I just knew something felt really wrong. Looking back, I can't really put a label on what caused me to be so angry. And I have my own theories. One of them is that, In high school, I did AP psychology in an attempt to help myself, like get some answers about myself. And we learned about this thing called contact comfort, which is apparently really important for the mother to have with the child immediately after they are birthed. And if they don't get that, it kind of can cause a lot of issues for the kid in adulthood. So I assume with what I know about how I was left and stuff, I didn't get that. And even in the orphanage, you know, there was so many babies in there. There was barely any staff, I guess is what you would call it. And actually, recently, when I was talking to my mother that I live with, because I don't live with my mother that remarried anymore, she said that when they got me and were interacting with me for the first time, they were really surprised that like I had so much trouble bonding. Like I wouldn't accept physical affection and stuff. And I had a hard time like emoting and stuff. Like they would try to get me to laugh. Like they would do all these funny faces and they would, you know, tickle me, and I would just kind of stand there like no emotion. So back to what I was saying, high school, I started having really intense behavioral issues. Sophomore year or my junior year, I can't remember what it was, I went inpatient for the first time. So to a psychiatric unit.
Today's video is sponsored by BetterHelp. I work every day. I don't take sick days. Some days everything falls into place, and other days it just doesn't. We've all been there. Life has its ups and downs, and that's just how it goes. When things feel heavy, having the right support makes all the difference. A therapist can help untangle external pressures from internal thoughts, turning stress into personal strength. Therapy is a great tool for learning how to process emotions, build healthy boundaries, and develop ways to cope with social anxieties and everyday pressures. It can also help you set goals that truly fit your life. Getting started is simple. You fill out a short questionnaire online, and BetterHelp will match you with one of more than 30,000 licensed therapists with diverse specialties and backgrounds. If the match isn't right, it's no problem. You can switch therapists anytime at no extra cost. And the best part, you don't have to wait for the right time. Any day can be the start of something better. So if you're feeling stuck, click on the link in the description or visit betterhelp.com/softwhite underbelly to get 10% off your first month of therapy. Because taking care of yourself isn't about waiting for perfect. It's about showing up for yourself every day. Thank you for watching. And now back to the video.
It was eye-opening, and I want to say that that's kind of my coming of age moment and the time where I experienced a true loss of innocence. Because for forever, basically since I had been struggling, the only pain I had known was my own, which kind of actually protected me in a way. And then I remember getting thrown into the psych ward and hearing the kids tell their stories and, you know, group therapy and stuff, and just being horrified. And that became my reality for a really long time. That was what I was taught about the world, that the world was actually a really evil place. And I think it was 10 times harder for me to break that mindset for a really long time because it was kids. And I kind of had this realization that kids didn't ask to be here, you know, and these horrible things were happening to them, like sexual abuse, and, you know, there were victims of rape, and there were girls that had such bad eating disorders that it was horrible to see. And there were also like a lot of kids that were there for self-harm, and that was probably the hardest thing to be exposed to, because I remember there was a 13-year-old girl, and, you know, she didn't really keep her wounds wrapped. Maybe she wanted people to see them, I don't know, but they were horrific. And it traumatized me, not in a selfish way, because what was happening to them didn't happen to me. We all had completely different stories. But that was kind of like the second I remember kind of having an awakening about the world, that evil was real, you know? So I got out of the psych ward, was in an IOP program, and then I went back pretty shortly after entering that IOP program, because I was still really unstable. Like, I was fluctuating between like rage and like some weird hypomanic state. I don't know if it was because they kept putting me on so much medicine that my body wasn't used to. So I got to the second psych ward, and this was actually a better facility than the other. Like, it taught you tools, it taught you how to cope. Did I necessarily walk out of that and do those tools when I got upset? No. But I also think I wasn't at a point in life where I would listen to anyone or anything, because I was so angry and depressed. I was fine for the most part for a couple months. And then I think when I turned 17, I started getting really sick again. And I didn't really do drugs as a teenager. Like, I would smoke weed sometimes and I would experiment a little bit, but it was never like an addiction. It wasn't like physical, where I physically relied on it and needed it. But I made a stupid mistake of buying a lot of Xanax. I don't remember the amount of pills that I bought, but I was working a job and I was cool with some of the chefs, and I was like, hey, do you think you could take me to buy drugs real quick? And they were like, yeah, we'll take you. So they took me and I picked them up, and it was actually from an ex-boyfriend that I got them from. Went back to my house, and I didn't take them until the next morning. And I don't remember how much I took necessarily, but I took enough to black out for 3 days. And I got out of the blackout phase in the children's hospital where I live. And I didn't remember anything. I had no idea why I was there, and that scared me. And, I had a nurse come in and ask me, like, do you remember who I am? And I was like, no, like, I remember like taking the pills, and I don't remember anything after that. So, of course, with the state that I was in, and because I was an adolescent, they forced me to go back inpatient. So I was sent to Arlington, into a facility there. And again, just the same traumatic experience, really awful things that happened to kids. I think that was the worst facility I'd been to out of all of them, based on the kids' stories that were there. And I was there for a while, and, you get phone calls, you're able to talk to your family and stuff. And I kept asking my mom, like, why am I still here? Like, when are you going to get me out? Because the past few times I had been institutionalized, they always pulled me out early against doctor's orders because they just didn't want me there. But they weren't doing that this time, and that was making me scared. And around the 9th day, my therapist and the inpatient told me that I was going to be sent to a residential facility. I lost it. I didn't want to go. I was so angry, but at the same time, thinking about it now, where else was I supposed to go so that I could be safe? Like, I'm not sure. Like, yeah, it was a gritty, horrible facility that a kid shouldn't be at. But I didn't know. I can't imagine, like, where else I would have gone. Like, my life would have just been continuous inpatient visits and IOPs and, like, all this stuff that wasn't working to stabilize me, Like, should it have necessarily been, like, an aggressive wilderness program? Not necessarily, but it definitely should have been something residential, And I was so mad at the time because I didn't understand that. It just felt like anytime I got sent away, it was because they didn't care. They didn't want to deal with me. Like, no one really asked me the question why when I was growing up, which I felt like now was maybe important. Like, I was having all these behavioral issues, and, it was always like, put a Band-Aid on it or distract yourself. It was never the question, like, why do you feel the need to behave like this? Like, why are you so angry? Why are you so depressed? But at the same time, you can't expect people to read your mind about that kind of stuff. That's not really a fair position to put someone else in. So I ended up willingly going to the facility in Alabama. And when I got there, it was like a huge culture shock. Like I said, I grew up very privileged. Like anything I needed, I had. It lived in a nice area. This was like a huge culture shock. This was like the middle of nowhere, Alabama. We're sleeping outside. There's kids that the kids' stories there are 10 times more awful. So I get there, and I'm scared, but I don't cry. I try to keep it together because my mom is saying goodbye to me, and I don't want her to be scared because I know that she was shocked too at what the facility looked like. Going back to what I was saying before, it wasn't necessarily the fact that we were like kind of forced to do manual labor. And like one of the things we had to do was fill potholes. So we would walk like a mile to fill buckets with gravel, like multiple buckets with gravel. And we would walk back and we would put them in the hole. And then just repeat that process over and like pull weeds outside for like 3 hours. It wasn't that really affected me. Like, yeah, it did, but to a certain extent in my stay there, I stopped caring about that. And more so, I just couldn't handle hearing what had happened in these children's lives. And I realized that they most always had some horrible backstory from when they were children or their childhood, or something really, really traumatic happened in their teenage years. And I just remember feeling really overwhelmed, honestly. And it kind of became like a guilt because I felt like after hearing everything that they had gone through, I didn't really have a right to feel the way I was feeling. Like so traumatized by what I had been through, But that's more of a perspective I have now that I'm trying to be okay with. Everyone processes things differently. I had a psychiatrist tell me once, like, some people could stub their toe and it could be traumatic and affect them for the rest of their lives, It's just about how the person chooses to deal with it. And then I eventually graduated from that facility because you had to graduate to leave the program. And was okay. I started college, I actually got kicked out of my private school. I was asked to leave. I had the choice to either leave willingly or get expelled. And I didn't want to get expelled, so I left willingly and went to like kind of an alternative school and then got sent to public school. I was okay for a little. And then still had like therapy regularly and school counselors checking on me and psychiatry and like all the help that I could possibly need. And then the second I turned 18, I got the formal diagnosis of borderline personality disorder, which didn't surprise anyone once they looked into it, like, and started reading about it. I was like unwilling to accept that diagnosis because I didn't want it put on me, and I felt like I had already been through so much. I was starting to identify with being an institutionalized person, which is pretty frequent in people that have experienced that. Like, you kind of just feel like you belong there. Like, that's the only place that's where your life is headed. Your life is headed for constant facilities, constant, shoving medication down your throat, because you become so used to the chaos of that. And I still deal with that kind of being a part of my identity, I went to community college and was fine. I made good grades, and then dropped out for a little, went back, did some more classes, and transferred to like a 4-year university in my adulthood. But I kept falling into like these really bad depressions, so I kept dropping out. And I didn't feel like it was good for me to be in school because, number one, I had no idea if I even wanted to use the degree that I was getting. And number two, I just felt like I needed to work at the time and learn some stuff on my own. Now that's pretty much where I'm at. I recently fell into a really bad depression. And it was different because this time it wasn't for attention. Like, I'll admit that. I have no problem admitting that. A lot of the times when I was younger and I would, self-harm or like get angry, it was for attention, or like scream about my pain and go into these really bad neurotic episodes. It was so that people could see how much pain I was in, and I wanted them to see. I wanted them to know. I wanted everyone to hurt just as badly as I was hurting. I don't really have an answer as to why. I think that hurt people like to hurt people sometimes. But like I said, this depression was different. This was like pretty textbook depression, basically similar to the one where I was 12. But it was much darker because as an adult dealing with it, it felt 10 times realer. Like I had this realization that the pain I carried, I couldn't run away from, and it wasn't going to go away. It might get better, if I work through it, but I would never be able to forget it. And that's what put me in that state. I couldn't handle the fact that I would have to live with my pain for the rest of my life. It felt undoable. It felt like an unfathomable thing to do, actually. And so I didn't tell anyone, actually. My mom was worried. She told me that I should go see my therapist and go see my psychiatrist. So I did. I was completely honest with them, It was a really cutthroat depression. Like, it was an all or nothing thing. And it was like, I realized I had two choices. Actually, three. I could either take the easy way out and kill myself. I could continue to sit and be miserable, or I could do the hard work that it took to be able to accept the things that happened and be okay with that. It was going to hurt either way. It was going to hurt all three ways, actually, whether I was dead or alive. It's going to hurt if I sit in it and continue to be miserable because I'm comfortable in that state of mind. And it was going to hurt if I chose to work through it, because it would bring up those feelings that I've had for so long that I don't want to feel. And that's part of the reason that I've been putting it off for so long and, not taking therapy seriously and choosing to be miserable. It's because I'm comfortable in it. It offers me some type of, I don't even know what to say about it. It just is something I'm deeply attached to. That sadness. And I don't know if it's because of some of the things that happened in the psych ward with the children, which they tell you in the adolescent unit not to bond. You're not there to make friends. But, you throw a bunch of fucked up kids in a hospital, they're going to bond. They're going to share phone numbers. They're going to share Snapchats. They're going to share Instagrams. They're going to get overly attached to people that are there. It's just what happens,
Did you feel loved as a child, as a young child?
I didn't. No, I still don't feel loved, honestly. And that feels wrong because I'm aware that people love me. But I feel like my adoption has affected me so very deeply. I don't think that's a feeling I'll be able to shake for a very long time.
The adoption or the rejection, for lack of a better word?
The rejection.
Yeah.
Completely.
Of your biological parents.
Yeah. Which is interesting to think about because I know they couldn't keep me. I know that was an option with the law. Still, the way I was left and just how careless it seemed, hurts more than anything.
And you don't know the details.
I don't know the details.
Maybe you weren't the second child.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows?
I don't know if I was the only child.
Right.
Know?
Your mom might have had borderline personality disorder and just wasn't able to deal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I spend a lot of time missing my mom and dad. All the time, actually. You know, I try not to think about it. I try to suppress it as much as I can. But in school, like in private school, I had a really good English teacher. And actually, he helped me process a lot of the things that I was going through with my adoption through the assignments that he would give. And all of my poetry and all of my writing assignments were all about my birth parents, you know. Not having a mom and dad really affected me. That feels selfish because I was given a second chance at life, you know. And I know that I shouldn't feel that way, but I spend a lot of my time just wanting them so badly. Like, so badly. I feel like I don't fit in anywhere. I feel like even when people tell me they love me and need me, I don't believe them. I move through life really paranoid, and I can't trust anyone. And a part of me feels like I deserved to be left that way. Like something I had done that, like, carrying me was so bad for my mom that she didn't want me, you know? Like my existence was such a burden to her that she left me the way she did, you know?
Right. But you could also be another child who went through the same abandonment that you went through and saw your adoptive parents as a blessing and was so grateful for that. I think a lot of adopted kids have been like that.
Yeah, I agree.
It's perspective, I think.
It is perspective, and I'm learning every day how important perspective is. I'm trying to find a lot of comfort in the what ifs right now. Like, what if instead of laying in bed all day and sleeping all day, I get up in the morning and get ready and go for a walk for a little bit. I've been starting to read like some books that I've had forever, because I really feel like learning is something I still care about, and I feel like you can learn even if you're not in school. It's offered me a lot of perspective changes, but again, I think it's going to be the process of practicing those positive thoughts to break the cycle that I've been in of being really pessimistic and, you know, negative.
Sometimes depression is just depression.
Mm-hmm.
It isn't like your circumstances were so awful.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes if you have a depressed disposition, you're just going to be depressed.
Mm-hmm.
You could win the lottery and you'd still be depressed.
I think that scares me a lot.
Being happy?
Being happy scares me because it's uncomfortable, and I feel like if I was happy, I wouldn't let myself be for some reason. Or, like you just mentioned, if something good happened, you know, that I should be grateful for, I would still be really depressed. You know, that scares me a lot. That I can't, that's always going to be there, going back to what I said before. You know, you can be put on medicine, you can get the therapy, you can, you know, go to a facility, you know, but if you have the mindset that I'm trying to break right now, you will never get better because you're not working with yourself. You're working against yourself. And for a while, I've been battling myself, you know, leaning into the negative thoughts, you know, doing nothing to help myself because a sick part of me likes being miserable. And this is an interesting thing that I recently came to realize when I was reading a book, is that for a while, or up until this point, I realized I've had an ego about the pain I felt. I felt like because I've experienced so much pain firsthand, it gives me a better perspective at the reality of life than anyone else, which is wrong. That's completely wrong. And honestly, I wish that didn't exist within me, because it still does. I still, I'll meet someone happy and I feel like I'm like, you don't deserve to be happy. That's not fair at all, actually. Just stuff like that.
Are you artistic?
Very, yeah.
There have been a lot of great artists who are severely depressed. Mm-hmm. And that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
And if you were one of those happy people that you just described, it's not very likely you'd be such a great artist. The depression and the artistic mindset kind of go together.
It's interesting. I find that I can only create at really low spaces. And when I'm kind of like baseline, I'm doing okay. I'm so uninspired. I think that's what makes me attached to it.
What if you just dug into your art and saw it as a gift?
I would say my art isn't necessarily like painting or drawing or anything. I would say it's more so like writing.
Yeah, it could be anything.
Yeah.
There are a lot of great poets, writers, songwriters were terribly depressed. Mm-hmm. And they were geniuses.
Yeah. I don't know. I've been writing recently.
And if you had asked them on their deathbed if they would rather have been happy, and the trade-off for being happy is you probably don't have that depth to create like that.
It's interesting.
They'd probably say
during a really weird, like, manic time in my life, which I'm not bipolar. I was just drinking like 1,200 milligrams of caffeine every day for some reason. I wrote like a lot. And one of the things that I wrote was, if I had the choice between being naive and happy or the choice between being miserable with perspective, I would choose misery every time.
Sure.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. I think, I actually watched your intro video before I decided to do this, and you were talking about how like you use these videos as kind of a crash course on empathy. I think I have my character defaults and I have my own ways of coping, but I will say the one thing that I did get out of everything I've experienced is empathy. I feel like it surprises me that a lot of people don't really have that. Or they have it to an extent, but they don't really, fully understand what it's like to be in really dark places. Which, you can't knock anyone for that, because everyone's life is different. I think that would be really unfair if, you constantly went to which is something that I've done before. You constantly like try to grasp at someone that doesn't number one, know what it's like to be in those dark places, and number two, you put everything that you're going through on them. I did that a lot when I was a teenager because I didn't felt like I belonged anywhere. So when I had a friend, I would kind of treat them as my safety net, which is so unfair, especially to do as an adolescent. That's a kid. They're probably going through their own things too, to the same extent as me, maybe not, but like to do that to someone else, that's not fair, because like I said before, you can't expect someone to save you and you can't expect someone to read your mind, And what I wanted, my goal with doing that was ultimately for them to be able to save me, to fix me, to tell me that everything was going to be okay. Because I wanted someone else to do it for me. I didn't want to do it by myself. I didn't think I was strong enough to do it by myself. I didn't believe in myself. I hated myself. I just wanted someone to magically like snap their fingers and have all the pain within me go away and be completely normal.
I like that you said you enjoy being unhappy.
Yeah, it's fucked up, right?
I've had two people very close to me who are similarly depressed as you. And I honestly believe they enjoy it.
It's a sick fucking attachment. It's an attachment to its core is what it is. I don't understand it. I've journaled so much about trying to understand it. There's a certain comfortability of sadness. Maybe it's that, they maybe feel like it gives them a firmer grasp on reality. But when I think about that now, maybe I say that as a way to protect myself. Because it scares me how much I like it. It's very complicated. Humans are very complicated. I don't understand it, I feel like maybe you get so used to being in such dark places, anything other than that feels really uncomfortable and you can't do it. That's how I feel. I can't accept good things, It's weird. Like, people will try to do good things for me and I won't let them. I won't let anyone help me because I like the way I am. It has to be some type of weird ego thing to me. It has to be about something about that misery feeding your ego in some type of way. It does that for me. But again, that might be to protect myself. I'll be honest about that. And I used to pride myself on like not having an ego, which is funny because that's proof that I quite literally do. And I think it's just like a sick addiction, that misery. Like, you get a taste of it and you get a taste of what it's like to feel so deeply in a bad way. And you just don't want to let that go. Like, it is, you don't want to ever not be able to feel that way again because it does something to you. It changes you in a good way or a bad way, But the ability, for me, it's mostly the ability to be able to feel that deeply is what I like.
But it doesn't mean your life is any less than a happy person's or is not on the right track, because I truly believe that people who have your disposition can find love just as well as someone who is naturally upbeat and happy. And you can be just as fulfilled and creative and do great things in life. It's just you're just going to be a downer.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it's a bad thing.
Yeah.
It looks on the surface to be a bad thing, but it's just as from people who don't have that kind of negative or down or whatever word you want to put on it, that mindset, that disposition, we see it as broken, but it's really not. It's almost like it's better. It's almost richer, deeper.
I would say that's exactly why I like it.
You should just enjoy it.
I guess it's kind of just about riding the
wave.
And
there are people who love people like you.
Really?
Trust me.
That's funny. Well, I hope I find them because
You
so
will.
far everyone's fed up with me. Yeah, it definitely has to do with that rich feeling.
Being happy is overrated.
Exactly. Like I just said, I choose misery with perspective over being naive and happy. It's something about like that feeling. It's almost like euphoric in a way.
People like you roll their eyes. You roll your eyes at happy people.
Yeah. But at the same time, like the depression itself is really weird because it's like you're like the symptoms, the physical symptoms, like your appetite goes away. For me, at least, some people, their appetite, they overeat, you know, your appetite goes away and you kind of stop taking care of yourself. And while you're not taking care of yourself, it almost creates some sort of like euphoric feeling in a way. Maybe it's the dehydration and not eating, but yeah, but there's something soft at its core about it. It's not an innocent softness though. It's a very like, whoa, maybe you need to take a step back, but there is something complex about it. And going back to the psych ward when I was an adolescent, that was the first time I actually experienced true human duality. Because, for example, like there was a girl there and she had a really bad eating disorder. She was so thin, but she was so affirming. Like about everyone that was there. She was giving the most compliments and she was checking to see if people would eat and stuff, like trying to get them to eat. It's a sad thing, you know? It's a shocking thing. And I feel like when I saw that, I was just left in a state of confusion. 'Cause like, how can someone be suffering so much, but still have that empathy to them, that selflessness? I couldn't, and I still don't understand it. Even when thinking about myself, I don't understand how I can be so selfish and selfless at the same time. Because all of it, all the mental health disorders, addiction, they're selfish diseases. Like people don't like to say this, but the act of suicide is selfish. It's so selfish. And, I'm careful about who I say that to because, some people, get offended if they have loved ones that have dealt with suicide. But to commit that act and leave people and affect people the way you're going to affect them is just really, really selfish. And I can say that having experienced that feeling, which happened recently, actually. Like I said, the most recent depression was actually not about attention for the first time ever in my life. I experienced the feeling of like true selfishness. And I'm still trying to shake that feeling off. It's going to take a while to recover from that. Like realizing that you're capable of doing something like that is a scary thing. And it's confusing. It's really confusing. And I think it was even scarier when, I had people that were scared for me and come talk to me. Specifically, I'm Catholic. I don't really talk about my religion to other people, but I do believe in God. When I was going through that depression, I reached out to someone who was very strong in their faith and was kind of asking questions about like if suicide was a sin. And, he said it's a grave sin, something big enough to damn you to hell. And I knew something was really wrong because hell didn't scare me. Like going to hell didn't scare me, which my entire life I had been terrified of hell. And it just didn't scare me. I didn't care. I would rather go to hell than keep suffering like on this earth, which doesn't make any sense because hell is eternal suffering. It's just such a contradiction. It's like, and I feel like that pretty much describes me, like as a person, just very contradictory and like not knowing anything at all. Like thinking you know something and then the next day waking up and realizing that you were completely wrong and you don't know, which is, used to scare me a lot because I used to be a person that needed a clear-cut answer and a plan. Now, I'm trying to find comfort in the fact that I don't know anything. And it's been helping a lot, actually, because I wake up now and I'm like, oh, well, something could happen today that changes the course of my life, in a positive way. I like to think that hopefully not in a bad way, because that would really not be fun. But once you can be okay with not knowing all the answers. Because I feel like that was also putting me in a depression. You know, I would spend so much time stewing about, you know, my birth parents and like making up stories and like going down like rabbit holes in my mind about, you know, what happened and why it happened the way it did, and then my life now and like why I'm so fucked up. Sometimes there isn't an answer, and you have to learn to be okay with that.
I suspect that if you had your birth parents, mom and dad, they were married, still together to this day, and you were raised by them, you'd still be the same girl you are now.
Maybe. I've spent a lot of time hoping that if they did raise me and I live with them, that I wouldn't. But you're right. I think it might be a biological thing at this point.
I think it is.
Yeah. Definitely a brain chemistry thing.
For
because,
sure. We're all chemistry.
Yeah.
Everything we do, everything about us is chemistry.
Our bodies are just flesh vessels. But yeah, I don't know. Because even now, like, I have these moments of clarity, even in darkness, where I'm like so self-aware that all it will take is just for me to start changing my perspective.
I don't think it's something that you need to change or fix. I think it's something you need to enjoy and dig your heels in and just really accept that this is who you are.
I like that you said that to me, because my entire life people have been telling me to fix it or finding a way to fix it. Like something's wrong.
You should be happy. Look, you're beautiful and you're healthy and you have everything to live for and all that kind of shit. It's all bullshit. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's all a bunch of bullshit. Because nothing anyone is going to say, here's a winning lottery ticket. It doesn't matter. None of it's going to change the way you are. Mm-hmm. And the way you are is wonderful. And you have a gift, and you should enjoy it.
Thank you. Yeah. That definitely changes my perspective a lot.
And your art, I think, is a huge part of all that. Because if you're not creating, then it gets really frustrating.
Yeah. Maybe I will just be a starving artist.
You don't have to be starving. You can be successful too, but you can't possibly create the way someone like you can create if you're happy.
Yeah, it's so fucked up. Yeah, something to think about.
There's always a trade-off.
I had someone tell me once that you can be a dark person, but it doesn't mean, you know, you're miserable.
Right.
Well, I'm curious to know your thoughts on that.
Like, I'm pretty dark. Look at this project I'm doing.
Yeah.
But if you ask my friends or family or anyone close to me if I'm a sad person, I'm really not. I can be. If I stop creating, I start to get really dark. But if I stay busy, I have the best days of my life. I've had some of the best days of my life in the last 6 years since I started this dark project. And that just makes my life richer, and I love it. And I keep learning and keep growing and keep hopefully helping other people. And it's a wonderful way to go through life.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like maybe an issue I'm having right now is too much time.
Too much time is terrible.
Yeah, too much time is the enemy of everything, especially if your brain chemistry is off.
Yeah.
Because it's just time to think, time to go, time to drive yourself crazy.
That's why I stay so unbelievably busy.
Yeah.
Here it is Sunday. I was working all morning and I rushed here to do this with you, and I'm sure I'll be working all afternoon.
Yeah.
After this. And by staying so busy, yes, you're prolific, and hopefully you find some diamonds in there that make you look like you're a talented artist, but it's really just through hard work that you end up creating. I feel like I'm just curating the prolific work I do, and I only kind of post the ones that are worthwhile. So it looks like I'm really talented, but all it is I'm working really hard.
I think I think too much about needing to have a plan, which is honestly why I don't really believe in college, because giving an 18-year-old 4 years to figure out what they want to do for the rest of their life is insane to me.
It is.
I feel like being creative is the only way for me, honestly. Like, writing specifically has just helped me so much. And, you know, sometimes it's not always dark. Sometimes it's just writing down random thoughts and stuff and, like, wanting to keep those thoughts. And they're more special if they're not dark, actually, because it's, like, something to hold on to and to remember. Like, just like I don't want to forget my bad times, I also don't want to forget my good times. I want to remember the good times. Then again, that's just going back to learning how to balance the duality of life, which is something that I'll probably struggle with for a really long time, because there's an inherent unfairness to human duality. You know, I'm a pretty big person on fairness, and I feel like that also eats me alive, because I start thinking like, well, that wasn't fair. I have to get even with someone, or I have to figure out a way to make my life even somehow, because that happened to me. But it's not about that. It's not a game. I feel like I've thought that life was a game for a really long time. A game of like equalness. And it is to a certain extent, but like more so when I was younger, and like it was like, you did this to me, so I'm going to do 10 times worse to you. That's not how it's supposed to be. That's immature to me. I kind of got over that, but you know, as you get older, they say as you get older, your borderline gets better, which is interesting because I actually don't really have most of the symptoms now. I feel like if I do, it's more of an internal thing, like not really having an identity. And it's more so like depression leaning, like maybe major depression. But when I was younger, I had all of the criteria, like abandonment, like just I was a vile person. I was so angry. But yeah, I just felt like I witnessed a lot of things that I felt were unfair, and it just stuck with me. You know, it stuck, that mentality, like, well, everything has to be fair now. You know, I have to do everything I can now to help that person because their life has been so unfair for them. And that's also gotten me in trouble, because then I spend so much time, you know, trying to help save someone else. And then meanwhile, I'm dying.
That's right.
It's just a constant cycle. I've had people abuse that type of empathy that I have with me. And then that even becomes an even sicker cycle, because now you're attached to each other and you can't let each other go, and you're reliant on each other. Like if I stop taking care of you or you stop taking care of me, we're going to both be miserable. But that's not love, you know? Love is not attachment. Attachment can feel like love, even if it's bad, but they're very different. I feel like I've experienced love maybe a couple times, but the other times it's been severe attachment. And like, even when it wasn't good, you know, it's like, because I couldn't be alone, I would rather be with someone that, you know, isn't good for me or makes me sad.
How old are you?
I'm 23.
23. Did you go to college?
A little bit, yeah.
My oldest daughter, who just graduated, she was kind of panicked about like, what am I going to do? And like, you know, now I have to get a job, and you know, that becomes scary. And I recognize that she's got a very similar personality to me, and I am just encouraging her, just do something creative, because that's going to help you with your depression more than anything else will. And getting a job and working for some boss, and you're going to be ultimately miserable in a matter of months or years, is not the answer for creative people.
Yeah.
I think it's just digging into your creativity, and that'll help you with your depression more than anything.
I think so too. I think a lot of people don't understand that, because I've seen people say, like, a lot of the times, if mentally you're in a sick spot, I call my depression getting really sick. So if I say that, that's what I mean. If mentally you're sick, it's going to be 10 times harder to reach your goal. I don't know if that's true anymore after talking to you. And what's weird is that made sense to me, but now kind of I feel a little bit differently. I feel like there's a correct way now, or maybe there's no correct way. Here I am again, trying to do things the right way, a specific way. I feel like I've always been like that, and it's done nothing but hinder me.
Everything in life is a blessing and a curse at the same time. And being happy, being upbeat, and being a cheery person is a blessing for sure, but it's also a curse in other ways. And being depressed, being a downer, is a curse, and it's definitely a blessing at the same time. And if you don't understand that, then you're just going to fight against the undertow forever, trying to figure out why you're depressed or why you're unable to be a deep artist, whatever the word is for that. But people who are very happy have a hard time being super creative or creating important work or whatever you want to call it. You almost need that depressive mindset in order to create important work.
I feel like that's another part of the attachment, the inspiration it brings. Have you seen the movie Saw?
I think I did.
Do you know what it's about?
It's like one of those horror movies, right?
Yeah, but basically the whole point of it is he puts people in these really stressful situations, these traps. He puts them in traps that are going to kill them in a specific amount of time unless they find a way to get out of it. And the people that get out of it, the purpose of putting them in them is so that they can almost die, but not. And that's supposed to make them appreciate life. I actually drew a lot of inspiration from Saw because of, I relate to that. Should I? No, because it's so fucked up and it's like evil. But I relate to his mentality, kind of.
No, but I think you should embrace the darkness that you feel.
Yeah.
Rather than being horrified by it and trying to fix it. You'll spend the rest of your life trying to fix it, and you won't really make any progress.
That's interesting.
All your favorite artists had the same mindset you did.
It's interesting to think about because, like I mentioned before, my whole life people have told me I needed to fix it. Something was really wrong. Well, let's fix it. Like, let's make it go away. I've never even thought about the possibility of leaning into it. But if I did, it would maybe be a different approach to what I've been doing. Because I have been leaning into it, but maybe in an unhealthy way. Because I haven't been really writing that much. I haven't been focusing on my creativity. I've pretty much just been so introspective to the point of no return that I'm driving myself crazy. And when I'm doing that, I should at least be writing something down. There has to be a lesson to learn from it. That's another thing. I can't think that this pain is all for nothing. I can't, which is a part of the reason why I do believe in God, because, in the Catholic Church, they say there is life after death, and the existence of salvation and redemption brings me a lot of comfort, as it does to many people. I don't know why it brings me so much comfort, because I haven't done really anything wrong, that it's more just a feeling like I've done so much wrong in this life. Like I can't, that the idea of being saved in a way and being forgiven is is something I've never really had. Like, people tell me they forgive me and stuff, but I never believe it. Going back to what I said, people tell me they love me and they need me and like that I'm special. I don't believe that about myself. And in a way, that's kind of reality. Because, like, technically, we're all kind of alone.
Yeah, but that kind of thinking is going to motivate you to create more important work. It just is. When I was in my 20s, especially my second half of my 20s, I was seeing a therapist twice a week. Mm-hmm. And we'd had our meetings and we would talk and just kind of like hash things out. And then I finally realized, probably right around 30 or some early 30s, that rather than, looking at the fact that I like to work too much or so much as being a problem, I'm going to do the opposite. Because all my favorite artists did the exact opposite. They were just so immersed in their work and their cocaine and their dysfunction, but their prolific, beautiful work they created was all part of the same package. And I just wanted to embrace it rather than fight against it and see it as a problem. Let's see it as a gift. So I told him that I don't want to see him anymore. I'm going to stop coming in. He goes, well, we should talk about it next Thursday. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm telling you, I'm not coming in. He goes, well, we'll talk about it next time. And I'm like, I'm just telling you, you can do what you like with this information, but I am not going to see you any longer because I waste half an hour driving here, an hour of my evening talking about it, and another half hour driving back. That's 2 hours that I could be working. Mm-hmm. Twice a week we do this, and I'm not going to do it anymore. And that was the best decision I ever made. Mm-hmm. And I've been a fucking holic ever since. And that was the best decision I ever made. Cured my depression. Never had another depressed day again after that. I mean, I did, but I knew how to fix it quickly if I wanted to. Sometimes you want to just wallow in your depression if you break up with somebody that you care about and all that kind of stuff. But in general, being creative, almost to a fault, like really obsessive, really just devoting your life to it, is to me a cure for the depression. Mm-hmm. Goes away. You could if you like it, you can stop working and it'll come right back. It'll rise right up, mm-hmm. like water. All of a sudden you'll be up to your nose in it. But if you keep working, you kind of stay focused and driven and motivated, and the depression kind of subsides. For me.
Yeah. I feel like that's purpose. That's mm-hmm. like giving yourself a purpose.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have that, then sure, you're going to be depressed.
Yeah. I feel like that's what I've been dealing with.
And what's interesting about humans is we're all different. Some of us are wired differently, where they're cheery and upbeat and helpful and beautiful, wonderful, warm people. Mm-hmm. You are not, and I am not. But we have other qualities that are just as valuable.
Exactly.
And other people are leaders, and other people are, we all have different strengths and weaknesses at the same time. If you don't understand that we all have strengths and weaknesses, you're just not getting it. You're not understanding how life works, I think.
Yeah. I feel like people maybe aren't aware of that sometimes.
For sure.
It goes back,
especially depressed people.
Yeah. To the book I was reading was called Classic Philosophical Questions, and I stupidly forgot to bring it here. But one of the chapters that I was reading was discussing, like, are humans always selfish? And I started, I went into it not knowing the answer, but I kind of thought at first, what I first thought was, well, first I need to just define altruism, like what altruism truly means. And if I decide on a definition, then I can determine if it truly exists. And I started having a debate with my mom, and I said, well, I've come to the conclusion that humans are always selfish, and every action that we commit is in our own best self-interest. Mm-hmm. And she was like, why do you think that? And I then went on to provide her the definition of altruism that I felt comfortable using. And I was like, I don't think this exists. And she texted me, well, that's very pessimistic. You shouldn't question other people's motives. I was like, I just couldn't seem to frame it in any other way.
Yeah, but people don't understand Enneagram 4s.
Yeah.
You're an Enneagram 4, as am I. I'm a 3 and a 4, which the 3 part saves me. But that thinking, most people will not understand. Mm-hmm. And you live to be misunderstood. You enjoy it. Yeah. So you just have to enjoy it and dig your heels in and just be misunderstood. You'll love it.
Yeah.
It's really the way to be for people like you. And me.
I've always wanted to not be misunderstood. I've always wanted to fit in. I've always wanted...
No, you don't.
In the past, when I was a kid, yeah, I wanted that more than anything.
Really?
I wanted to fit. I did everything and anything I could to fit in. Really, truly, I did.
But it never worked.
The harder I tried, the more I pushed people away. Because then, the depression would come and I would not be able to act like I was able to fit in. And it would be like, whoa, like to other people, like, whoa, she's weird. Like something's really wrong with her. And that just made me even more upset because all I wanted was to belong somewhere. I never felt like I belonged anywhere.
No, I know the feeling. Yeah, you want to be loved and accepted and one of the group, but you also kind of don't.
Yeah. That I don't want to be accepted kind of came later in my life. Mm-hmm. That realization that, hey, maybe I waste a lot of time.
As you get older, you will feel more and more like that.
Mm-hmm.
You're still young.
Yeah.
Like you're 23. When I was 23, I didn't know any of this shit. I was just like, I was just young and stupid.
Yeah.
In my late 20s, I started figuring it out.
Mm-hmm.
And by the 30s, I was like, all right, now I'm starting to see that maybe I'm not so broken.
Yeah.
The Enneagram helped me a lot with that.
The what?
I'll give you a book when we're done.
Yeah. That brokenness, I cry about it a lot, to be honest. I've been seeing it as a really negative thing.
You can also see it as a wonderful gift.
Yeah. Like I said, like all these thought processes that I've been having, they don't have to be so harmful to my own self. They don't have to be some thing that's going to stop me in my tracks and ruin my life for a whole month and, cause me to lose my job when I don't show up or cause me to, not talk to anyone and sleep 18 hours a day. They don't have to be so harmful. In a way that's making myself more miserable, which again, I admitted earlier, I am attached to misery because I think it breeds something that other people don't have.
For sure it is.
Yeah. But it doesn't have to be so black and white. I feel like my depression recently has been so I'm either gonna stay depressed or I'm not gonna be depressed. There is no middle ground, and like you said, changing it to thinking, it's a gift, will definitely help. But it's I think in black and white, I think it's either this or that. And if it's not this or that, then I get really overwhelmed and I get scared.
Mm-hmm.
But earlier I mentioned that I'm trying to find comfort in the fact that I don't know anything at all, which is weird because...
You're probably Enneagram 4 and a 5. I'm a 3 and a 4, which,
oh, really?
which is, it's interesting. When you start reading it, you'll see.
Okay. But then I say that, but then I have all these insecurities and all these conflicting thoughts that completely conflict that. And here I am again, making myself go crazy because I'm well, I am self-aware of this, but why am I still doing this? I can stop doing this, but I don't want to stop because I like it and it feels good and it's weirdly euphoric and I never want to stop. It's it's a sick obsession.
You get it. You get it. Yeah. And it's a great thing. It's not a fault. It's a wonderful gift.
Maybe. I don't think anyone sees it like that in my life.
No, there are some great artists, probably a lot of people's favorite artists who had this kind of thinking and this kind of mindset.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. For now, I'm just existing. I did come out of that dark depression because, again, I started to get into this headspace of what if, and I was prescribed a pretty hefty dose of Wellbutrin, which I don't really like medicine, actually.
I don't either.
I hate it. I think it's shit, and I think it's poison, and I think that if someone's brain chemistry is the way it is, it should be that way, and we can figure out ways to deal with it naturally.
I did.
Yeah.
I was super depressed in my late 20s.
I mean, I've been on so much medication, like I felt like a sociopath. I really did. Like the last episode of self-harm that I had wasn't for attention, actually. It was some weird fucked up, like I'm so numb, like I want to see if this affects me. You know, was that the right decision to do? No, but it had gotten to a point where like nothing, I couldn't feel anything. Like there would be times when something bad would happen and I would need to cry because I know that crying is cathartic and I knew that would help me. So I'd sit down in my room like this and I would play a sad song and I would try to get it out. And I probably looked like a crazy person because I was like making all these crying noises, but I couldn't get anything out. And that probably drove me more crazy than like not being on medicine. I really did feel like a sociopath. Like it was very strange. All my empathy went away. Like I was very mute. And I don't know. It's strange feeling. But I'm glad I got to experience that. Because it just made me think, what if, like, number one, it made me scared that I was going to be like that all the time if I was on that medicine. So I immediately cold turkeyed it, which I do that a lot. I will jump off my medicine without saying anything to anyone just to, you know, feel what I feel like naturally.
You could be an Enneagram 7 and never, ever, ever feel that.
Yeah.
And that would be really sad.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's fun. I think it's an adventure, even when I feel really bad and get in really dark places, but everyone else seems to get mad at me. They're like, take your medicine, do this, do that, it's helping you. But sometimes I just really need to feel. I need to feel what it feels like to actually shed tears that are real. I need to feel like what it feels like to be so uncomfortable in my body. I want to rip my skin off. I need to feel like how I'm supposed to be. I feel like so much of my life has been trying to mask that, you know? And a lot of people, if someone ends up seeing that, they won't understand that. Right. It's like almost being like an adrenaline junkie. Yeah. Because when you get in those states, even like high anxiety states, like the hormones that you release, I think it's like norepinephrine or something, it like will speed up your heart and it will release so much adrenaline. That's an adventure. I mean, it feels really bad and I'll like start rocking myself back and forth to try to calm myself down and put myself to sleep. But I mean, when it's over, I'm like, whoa, that was weird, you know? But
I don't think there's anything wrong with you.
Really?
I think you're just an Enneagram 4 and a 5. And that's like none of the Enneagram types are any better or any worse than any others. They're all just different and we're all different. Yeah. And if you read about it, you'd understand it. And you see like, oh my God, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm just dark a lot of the time. And with that darkness comes a lot of depth of feeling and insight that a lot of other people don't have.
Yeah.
And you see the world just very differently than a lot of people do. And if you're not an artist, it'll become a problem.
Yeah.
But if you can create, whether it's writing or painting or a million, you know, you can choose your art form. But if you're not creating, it gets really frustrating.
Yeah.
And dark.
It does.
And the depression gets overwhelming.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm smiling.
Yeah.
Even though we're talking about dark stuff.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's, I guarantee you, if you looked at, when we're done, when you're flying back to Dallas, Dallas? Mm-hmm. Yeah. When you're flying back to Texas, write down 10 of your favorite artists, and I'll bet you 7 of them are.
Oh, they all killed themselves. They all fucking killed themselves. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
All of them.
I'm not saying you should kill yourself. I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
Because if you manage this correctly or well and stay away from drugs as an escape, then your life becomes richer.
I actually really don't like drugs.
I've never smoked pot. I've never done anything.
Yeah, I don't. I quit. I used to smoke a lot of pot.
It doesn't help.
Yeah, it made it 10 times worse. And also drinking, I'm just a big taste person, so I don't like forcing myself to drink something that tastes bad. But yeah, sobriety is like interesting. I'd rather be sober experiencing what I'm experiencing than on drugs because it feels more like real to me. And I like the reality of that. Like, it's almost like I look forward to it in my own sick way. Like, oh, that was dark. Like, next time, will it be even darker? And it, like, makes me happy in a weird, fucked up way.
Do you think you'll never meet anybody because you're like this? Do you ever have those thoughts?
I don't really think about that.
Good. Where I was leading with this is that you will, because there are people like me who, like, there was a time in my life, and it was pretty much that way up until just recently, where I didn't think I could ever be romantically attracted to anyone who wasn't a 4.
Really?
Who wasn't an Enneagram 4, because 4s have always been my thing.
Yeah.
Ever since I was a little kid. And now I think I'm healthier mentally than I ever have, and now I can appreciate other types too.
Yeah.
But there are people who just think you are the shit, and there's nobody other than you that could work for them. I'm telling you this.
Interesting. Yeah, when it comes to like love, I'm not concerned about it right now because I think I need to think about what that means and how to do it properly.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it.
Yeah. Because in the past, I have had really bad anger issues.
It's all right. You're human.
Yeah. It's not fair. But yeah, love is interesting. I had maybe an okay example of love when I was younger.
You had one?
Yeah.
That's great. Mm-hmm. That's the most important thing for a kid.
Yeah.
To see.
At least I'm at the point where I believe it exists. I feel like at a certain point, though, those feelings of like, you know, euphoria and like, oh, like this and that, we're going to do this and be so happy. And like, it eventually all goes away, though, and it becomes a choice.
It all goes to crap.
Yeah. It's like you get used to it. You get comfortable. And it becomes a choice to remain loyal to that person.
Right.
I honestly don't know if I ever see myself getting married. Would have to think about that. I think it would have to be a complete weirdo person.
For sure it would be. For sure it would be.
Yeah. But that's far away.
I think you're wonderful.
Thank you.
I don't think there's anything wrong with you. I just think you just need to figure out who you are.
Yeah.
And I have a book that can help you do that.
Yeah, if I could, I would just write, I guess, all the time.
That's what I do.
Yeah.
That's all I do,
but
7 days a week.
The problem is I need money, so I have to work because I need to eat and drink water.
No, but there are artists who can actually make money, especially in this new world. You can actually do that.
Yeah.
The world has changed a lot in the last.
In a bad way, in some good ways. Yeah. I just hate phones. Phones are awful.
Yeah, but everything is like for everything that happens in the world, every person, everything, every change, there's a good aspect and a bad aspect to it, and you just have to adapt.
Yeah. It's funny, I'm big on Reddit, and I saw a comment that made me laugh so hard. I was actually in the depression, like the sickening depression, and I really appreciated that comment because it made me smile for the first time in like a couple weeks. Someone commented like, do you think Britney Spears is crazy? And the thread was about, I'm schizophrenic, ask me anything. And she commented, no, I think she's not crazy. She's just adjusting to society. And that just made me smile so hard because like, I just related to it. Like, yeah, I'm not crazy. I'm just adjusting to society, just like we all are. And that's going to go on forever until we die.
That's right.
You know, we're always going to have to be adapting. Am I the best at adapting? No, I freak out all the time. And
no, I don't want to ever have to adapt.
Yeah.
But when technology changed photography drastically 10, 20 years ago, I was lost for a few years there, really depressed and lost and scared. And then I figured out how to adapt. And now I'm better than ever. And I'm sure something will change in the next year or 3 that I'll have to adapt again. And I could be left behind or I could change with the times. And that's what we all have to do.
Yeah. I feel like that's the most natural thing about humanity is that we're constantly changing and evolving.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel like to be static is not constructive.
Yeah,
You know, just unwilling to ride the wave that life is evolving, you know, and adjust. There's a certain resilience that people have that have been through dark times, that although it might feel so chaotic and so bad, if you have that resilience in you, you will always be okay. You always will. There have been so many times where people I know that I'm very close to, including, and even myself, I feel like I'm never going to be okay. This depression is going to last forever. Like, I'm never going to get out of this mindset. And then the next day I just wake up and I'm like, oh, I'm fine. You know, it's crazy.
You are fine.
Yeah.
What does your tattoo say on your left arm?
It's a Virgin Mary.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I hate all my tattoos. I got them like when I was 18.
I like the long line on your arm.
People say that. Some people hate it a lot. They're like, why'd you get that
I
stupid
love the
line?
simplicity of it.
Oh, thanks. Yeah.
And the 444 on your chest?
Mm-hmm.
What is that?
I don't know. I saw it on Pinterest.
Just,
Which actually, funny enough, apparently the sequence of 4s is like a really bad omen in Chinese culture. And I didn't do any research because I was stupid and 18 years old. I'm like, oh, I'm going to go get a tattoo. Like, and I got this. And then like, I'm kind of like into like the universe. Like,
well, you're an Enneagram 4, so maybe there's a
like,
meaning to it.
The universe will tell you things, like, and like certain sequences and like certain patterns can like really affect your day-to-day life. So when I got this, all of a sudden, like, these weird things started happening to me that like were really bad. And I was like, what's going on? So I researched like the 444 sequence that had just gotten tattooed on me. And I was like, oh yeah, it's a horrible omen in Chinese culture. Like, it means bad luck. And I was like, well, fuck, now I'm just fucked. And I have this on me and I can't get it removed. Yeah.
I'm going to get you one of Richard Rizzo's books on the Enneagram, and it'll change the way you see yourself.
Yeah.
That was a fun talk.
Yeah.
All right. Ella, thank you so much.
No problem.
And it'd be fun to get an update with you in a couple of years and see where you're at.
Okay.
Cool. I think you're just doing just fine.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
When I was designing the first Soft-White Underbelly book, I realized that there were so many great portraits that weren't going to make it into that book. They just wouldn't fit. And once I saw how well that first book sold, I knew I'd have to design a second book. This second book is finally ready to ship. Like the first one, this book has a collection of some of the best portraits from Soft-White Underbelly, accompanied by a quote from that person's interview. This book features another group of Rebecca portraits, as well as a collection of color images of the Whitaker family, and plenty of others. You can order yours for $125 or $150 for a signed copy at softwhiteunderbelly.org. Again, like the first book, once this book is sold out, I will not be printing more of them. The portraits are what Soft-White Underbelly is all about, and these two books contain the best of all that work. Thank you for watching.